The following program was provided by an independent producer solely responsible for its content. The opinions expressed do not necessarily represent the views of this station, its staff, board of directors, or underwriters.
Hello and welcome to People's View. We have a little bit different format today. We're going to talk a little bit in the discussion on the political activities in the city and the state. But I also want to talk to my audience that we need volunteers in this coming election. Everybody who wants to get active, please call the Nashua City Republican Committee and find out how you can be of help. We're going to have people who are running, and two of the people that are running this year are David Schoneman, who's running for state representative, and our state senator, Kevin Avard. Yep. All right. So we'll start off with Kevin, and Kevin, tell us a little bit about what's happening up in Concord.
Well, thank you, Carl, and thanks for having me on the show. And right now, there is a spirit of people are starting to wake up. And backing to what Carl said is that we do need people to get involved. People are saying they've had it. They've had enough of this. They've had enough of a lot of the mandates and on and on. But one thing that we want our audience to know is that we're also on YouTube. And if you're watching us on YouTube, please hit the like button and subscribe to our channel. And you can also share our interviews as well as watching it on Channel 96. But yeah, thanks for having me on the show. A lot of things are happening up in Concord. One of the hot topics obviously has been redistricting. Mm-hmm. We know that we gave a timeline to the city of Nashua to redistrict Nashua. They held out to the last minute, it seems, and there might, if anybody wants to talk about gerrymandering, I think maybe we can talk about the city of Nashua. Mm. However, we came up with a good compromise. Obviously not everybody's happy with it, but Senator Gray did a really good job, and he did a really good job of explaining what he had done. Basically, in the federal Constitution and our Constitution, our state Constitution, was the foundation of his the way he drafted. Mm-hmm. What we did for redistricting, and it wasn't based upon who likes what or how good a map looks. It basically on population. Mm-hmm. And rather than having one town like say Manchester just completely dominate, say Goffstown and in Pinardville or whatever. I don't know if that's the same thing, but they broke it up to the point where a little here, a little there. It represents an even distribution, and based on our Constitution. Now, I think way back, I think it was Manchester versus Gardner. It was the impetus for that lawsuit was, and I think it was settled based on the fact that it wasn't distributed right. So that was his whole framework of building what we have now for redistricting. Every 10 years, we're by law, we're supposed to redistrict based on the census. And so rather than setting senators against each other and parties against each other, he went on based on the population. If he wanted to get really political, he could have had 3 Democrats running for the one seat, mm-hmm. and he chose not to do that. Mm-hmm. And he also spoke with, I know Senator Guida's district got weeded out, so he actually had to move. But so he wasn't doing any favoritism at all. It was more or less based on the population, and that's not easy. Of course, you have protesters out there doing their thing, saying this and that. But ultimately, I think the integrity of his heart was mm-hmm. definitely based upon the numbers of the population, and I think that's a good way to do it.
That's what's supposed to happen. Right. 2010, I happened to serve on that committee for Nashua, mm-hmm. and basically the number is somewhat less than round numbers, 3,000 people, okay, plus or minus 5.
Right.
Now, if you want 5%, and
Somewhere the number 10 came in. I'm not sure where that what. I don't know all
about the 10, but and we did it here with the city clerk, and the first time he did that because he knew what the numbers were, and he just did. The first time he cut off elective representative town. All right, and it was Republican, and he says, "Well, I'll go back and see what I can do." And he says, "Oops, I found out I cut off a Democrat too." So he was even. It wasn't that he was doing it specially. He didn't know where everybody lived exactly, and he just had to. Fortunately, the two wards were butted each other, so all he had to do is change a few streets. But that's easy to do, and we did that. We were going to lose in the city one representative at that time.
Oh, yeah.
Because if you just divided the overall number and said that you only qualified for 26, we structured it so that every ward was plus or minus 5%, and every ward had 3 representatives. We were able to do that.
Yeah.
Kevin, how is the New Hampshire population changed, and how does that affect redistricting? Because as the state grows, now we have 400-member state house, but that's now fixed, if I'm not mistaken. So it's not going to be more than 400. So we're not going to gain representatives. And then how has Nashua been affected then too, I guess?
Nashua, I think Nashua and Manchester really exploded in population. Not as much around the state, but definitely Nashua, and that just kept coming up. And of course, Manchester was a hot topic as well. But the populations have exploded, and they just didn't want one town dominating the surrounding towns. It didn't seem fair, and I agree, and I think that they did a really good job as far as, delegating based upon population, not on political advantages and stuff like that. But you're never going to have everybody happy at any point. But if you can just base it upon the numbers and be justified there, who knows? It may end up going to court, but at least it has that foundation of the Constitution, both federal and state Constitution. So that was one of the big hot topics. Energy is always a hot topic as well. We have issues with the bioplants. We want them to, up north, we get about 74 megawatts of stable energy that's up in the Berlin area. And it's basically a lifeline, seeing how all the paper mills went down a few years back. And so that's going to be a struggle keeping that going. We want to keep it going. We know that there's a subsidy that goes along with that, but it gives us 74 megawatts of stable power. Right now, the costs don't change, whereas the cost of gas, as you can tell, is just it's just gone to the roof, and we don't know if it's going to increase anymore. But that's an issue. A lot of good news. I mean, the governor's speech yesterday, talking about a $200 million surplus. Yay!
Yeah, it's always great news.
And he's giving some of it back.
And he's definitely giving some of it back. A little plug for myself. I passed my peer for Hampton Beach for the disability community. As far as what we have is an engineering study for what is that called? Impact study, as far as how it'll affect the area, and that passed. It's going to pass the House. But the whole concept is if we can build a pier at the Hampton Beach area for the handicapped individuals, for veterans, and for seniors that can't get out to the beach, they can go out to the end of the pier. I think it'll be a boom for the economy as well. They restructured all of Hampton a few years back, and it just drove in all kinds of money to the state. So adding a pier, in my humble opinion, it serves the disability community. Allows them to fish off the pier, allows the seniors to get out there, enjoy the waterworks, and it definitely help the community in that area. And it coincides with their 10-year highway plan. So I'm a little excited about that. I like to fish, and I'm getting older. So
we'll find you out in the pier then.
You're going to find me out there in the pier one of these days. But Really excited about that, and hopefully we can come up with something in the next few years. Lots of issues, pro-life issues that's out there.
And that's still not decided yet.
No, our friends on the other side of the aisle, they definitely want late-term abortions, and we're just not having it. You know, we don't believe in late-term abortions. You know, everybody talks about the science these days. The science. Well, you know, you look inside the womb, and that's a life.
Oh yeah.
And so, I think we want to protect the lives as much as possible, and we understand. You know. This is really a hot issue. However, you know, we want to do something to protect the lives so that there aren't late-term abortions. There's plenty of time as to what we've compromised on up to this point. So that's an issue.
I got a question about that, actually.
Yeah.
The big thing in national news, of course, is what the Supreme Court might do with Roe v. Wade. Have folks up in Concord been talking about the implications
they wanted
of
to,
a Roe v. Wade decision?
Yes, they did. They wanted to basically make that the law of New Hampshire, and we refused that in the Senate. There was a bill to say, well, you know, we adopt Roe v. Wade in New Hampshire, or something to that effect. And if the Supreme Court says no, it wasn't a good thing, why would we make that a law?
Let's talk about what would happen if the Supreme Court does that, if that's okay. Let's say the Supreme Court does overturn Roe v. Wade. I think there's a real possibility that could happen. It may not, but when I look at the makeup of the court and I listen to the arguments and listen to what some of the justices, the questions were being asked when this abortion case was presented, it sounds like, if they're telegraphing their opinions at all and they're questioning, it sounds like the possibility exists that Roe v. Wade could be overturned. I think that regardless, let's put the question of abortion itself aside for the moment. I think that the justices will view that original Roe v. Wade decision as a mistake from a jurisprudence point of view, not just from an issues point of view. So if that's the case, and I think that it's pretty real possibility, what happens to abortion around the country? What happens to abortion in New Hampshire?
Well, I think what happens is it goes back to the states, and the states rule on that as well. And I think, like Arizona, they're pushing back to an even earlier date where the cutoff period. But I think it'll be reverted back to the states, whether the states want to make the laws or not.
The Constitution says that anything that's not specifically given to
Enumerated. Yep.
goes back to the states, and that's what I think the questioning focused on.
So then, if Roe v. Wade is overturned and it goes back to the states, does New Hampshire have laws that permit abortion, or is that law that permits it based on the Supreme Court Roe v. Wade decision? So is it going to be starting at ground zero, and now they'll have to create a law to allow it? Because right now it seems like New Hampshire and other states are putting the brakes on abortion, bringing it down. If Roe v. Wade is overturned and no law exists that allows it, then we're starting down here, and you're having to create a law that would allow it, as opposed to putting the brakes on it. Is that correct?
I believe what we have right now is it allows up to 24 weeks. For abortions, and if
independent of Roe v. Wade,
independent of Roe v. Wade.
Okay.
Yeah, and that gives, in the case of rape, incest, and a whole host of other issues, the ability for somebody to have that determination whether they want one or not, and therefore after 24 weeks, up to the birth, that will be against the law because it is a human life, and the baby has its right over its own body. So we recognize that, and we're not for late-term abortions.
Right.
That's the bottom line. And so that is another hot topic issue that's going on up at the Capitol. A lot of energy bills, a lot of bail reform. We passed the bill. The police basically came out in favor of what we did. And I thought, for the very first time, I saw Democrats actually disagreeing with each other on the Senate floor, and I thought, well, that's interesting, because they realized there was a mistake made in the past, and a lot of the criminals are getting out and reoffending. So we address that, and hopefully the House sees it the same way.
Well, I think there's another real one that's going to be talked about. It's the marijuana.
That passed the House, and I think we see in Massachusetts, all the surrounding towns, they've got the marijuana bills, I think what concerns me is, why isn't the feds making it legal? Well, if you go out and you buy your marijuana and you use your ID and that's on record that you're using it, you've committed a federal crime. Mm-hmm. And you're trading one liberty for another. Because once you commit that federal crime, you've lost your Second Amendment right. Mm. I just don't understand why the feds haven't acted on this first. So I'm not going to be for it. And there's a host of other reasons, but if you're trading one liberty for a lesser liberty, I think that's.
Well, I think, as I mentioned before, I was on that marijuana committee that was on 4 years ago.
Oh, yes.
We looked at it. There were 25 of us met, I think, about 20 times during 1 year, just to hear what was happening on the West Coast. And there was a lot of information there that opened my eyes. And I think we didn't come down for or against marijuana, but we said if you go into selling having marijuana open for everybody to use, you have to have these things set to monitor
like 3 criteria.
There's several criteria, because you're going to want to grow them in your backyard. Well, you start using that and putting different kinds of chemicals on there. You got to make sure you're not going to give it to somebody.
So one of the things that came up in one of our discussions in the past years is, well, if you legalize it, you're going to really lessen the opioid crisis. Well, has anybody looked at California lately?
Yeah.
Did that bear out?
Yeah.
I'm not sure. Anybody look at Manchester lately? I don't know. I see a lot of people talking about opioid use in Manchester. Not that it's legal in Manchester, but I don't see that it's definitely lessening, but we'll see.
But the state agencies said it will take 3 years for us to put everything in set, so we won't have we'll have less problems, let's put it that way. But that's how long, and I don't see in any of this stuff has come up before. None of the legislation talks about waiting until you can do the analysis, do the testing, because there's no way of testing some people whether they're affected by it,
I do not see the governor signing any bill.
No, I don't think so.
Or the Senate president or the majority of the Senate.
But
approving any kind of bill that would legalize.
No, I mean we've allowed for the alternative treatment centers, right? And,
medical treatment.
Medical,
right.
And we understand that. I mean, if you're on being treated for cancers, and we know that it does help out with Nashua, and there are some medical uses for it, and I'm wholeheartedly for that. I have no problem if you can use some dangerous drugs to treat other things. I don't have a problem with that at all. But I think there's that's coming our way. I'd like to listen to exactly what is going to be coming before. Most likely to be coming for HHS, which I sit on.
Yeah.
One other issue that's a real issue is this whole DCYF thing.
Yes.
The Sununu Center. And I'm glad that the governor himself said, he'd get in the plow, one of those bulldozers and plow it over himself. So he definitely recognizes the need to get rid of that, that albatross around our neck. The Department of Health and Human Services, this was under your watch, and there was a $100 million lawsuit, and now they want to control the next phase of this. And I'm going to be very, very frank. I have issues with that. We had this little girl that was lost. I know probably the director thought I was looking at him with some daggers in my eyes, and there are some daggers in my eyes because something's got to change. This is a monstrosity, and some people were abused at the Sununu Center. And, you got all this new technology. Yeah, but you were watching this before, and I'm just not going to give you an easy pass on this. These kids are left in our care. they may be troubled kids, but you know, what has happened, and the taxpayers are going to be footing this bill of $100 million because of some of the sexual abuses that have been going on. And when did we know about it? You know, wow, we've changed this person and we've changed that person, and that's not going to wash. You know, and the whole fact that the HHS has been in control of this and it's costing the taxpayers this amount of money. They're fighting against the fact that, you know, we want to maybe even have a privatization of it with heavy oversight of HHS. But guys, you blew it. They blew it. And the taxpayers are on the hook for $100 million. That's just, that's unacceptable.
When is this case going to be heard, or is the case
It's already.
So it's $100 million is the decision. That's the judgment.
It's just, from my understanding, yeah. So, enough about me. How you doing?
Well, you know, the issues in Nashua, I think, affect folks on a day-to-day basis, maybe more than some of these other things, energy and whatnot. I think people in Nashua are concerned about masks, and Nashua has been a kind of a holdout for mandating masks in public buildings. I will note, though, as I go out, I don't typically wear a mask. I was asked at the bank to put one on before I went to the teller window, but that's the only place anyone was ever asked that I put on a mask. I don't feel comfortable. I don't breathe well with it. I don't want to wear it. I don't think it's effective. I don't think the science supports the kinds of masks that we're distributing and using.
Yeah,
it's just not that way. But I do know that going into some of the stores I've been into, Market Basket or Home Depot or whatnot, most people are wearing masks, but not everybody. And
I rebelled yesterday myself.
I think I give everyone who rebels some credit, because we should be able to live free. Really, we should. And I think that folks at home are understanding that more and more too. I think the store owners are understanding that more and more too, because no one is being insistent. Really, no one is being insistent. No one's giving you the nasty look like happened way back in the beginning. And I think that's good. I understand the mayor in his State of the City address the other night said that the mask mandate will not be extended. Hopefully I'm not misquoting him, but I believe that's what he said. So we should be seeing an end to the mask mandate in Nashua in February. And actually, what you both said in the beginning of the show, talking about the need for folks to get involved, because people are getting fed up. You said people are getting fed up. I think people are getting fed up. People in Nashua are getting fed up over things like this, because it's just not good anymore, and it doesn't seem to have the benefit that was intended way back in the beginning. I had an interesting story, actually. I have a friend who's an airline pilot for American Airlines, and he says that passengers for years have always been fine. But it's with the mask mandate that has pushed people over the edge and led to all these fights. And I think that that's indicative. It's just kind of a cross-section of America where you see people finally forced doing something that is the final straw. The X-ray machines and all the pat-downs, the body searches, body scans, all this stuff, everyone kind of accepted it. Long lines, all that, people accepted it. But the final thing was this mask mandate, and you see it on the airlines, and hopefully that's going to go away. But I think it's affecting people here in Nashua, and I think that people are anxious not to be under that kind of really a sense of oppression anymore. So as you both said, anyone who's at home interested in running because you're getting fed up, get involved, because it's very, very important. If you don't like wearing masks, get involved and campaign against these kinds of things.
Just a little note that I just heard on the radio on my way here, that eye infections are up since the mask mandates.
Interesting.
Yeah, and you know, when I put on my mask, I have to go like this with my glasses because they get all fogged up, and that makes sense.
But
there
are all kinds of unintended consequences from wearing these masks, and I think that the anxiety that people have felt as a result of wearing them is one of those consequences that's just unintended, but we need to get rid of that. So hopefully that's going to be finalized here in Nashua, and that'll be gone, because folks aren't happy about that. The other thing that's going on in Nashua, too, is a discussion about the barriers that have been on Main Street for the last few years, really based on COVID adjustments. And the COVID adjustments, we don't need those anymore. And I think that the City Hall seems to want to push the barriers, and I think folks at home don't want the barriers. So here's an issue that is one of kind of a dictatorial, non-transparent approach to this. There was
We'll call that a Trudeau reproach.
kind of a Trudeau report. Yeah, there were supposed to be meetings. There were supposed to be public meetings, a committee formed. The Board of Aldermen announced there'd be a committee formed, and it never happened. Meetings were posted after they had occurred, and this is being rammed through, and folks aren't going to like it. I think it poses a danger for emergency vehicles. I've seen emergency vehicles stuck on Main Street because there's nowhere to go.
Public safety is number one.
Public safety should be number one. And I think that if folks are not happy about it, they need to let people at City Hall know.
Transparency is number two.
And transparency is number two. And they're not being very transparent right now. So,
have they ever been? Under this administration?
Not under this administration, no. I would say no.
It's getting worse, though.
And it is getting worse. It is getting worse. So we need to have transparency. And an issue like a barrier is a key one where it's going to affect everyone's life. You know what Main Street is like when you try to drive down through here in the summertime. It's bad. And I don't think it really benefits the restaurant owners. I'm not convinced the restaurant owners are unanimous in their desire to have those barriers.
Well, they could do it differently. Too different barriers, not so far out.
There's all kinds of things that really could be done, but the City Hall, this administration has invested very heavily in this arts center. It's now up to about $27 million, from what I understand, and it's still.
Do the people own that? Will the people own that arts center? Will they be able to go in? If you're a resident of Nashua, will you be able to go into that arts center for free? I mean, they're the taxpayers.
They're going to have us charge you for whatever show is going on.
Yeah, someone told me the other day that the city of Nashua actually gave it to someone else, and now we're paying rent there. I haven't followed up on it. I don't know what is really going on there.
It's a matter of the taxes on the thing. How do you tax an empty unit? They have it taxed like it wasn't empty.
Oh, really? We'll
anyway,
see what happens with that. But I think getting some of the information on
transparency.
this, again, it's a transparency issue. I really question what money has been raised for this and what the benefit to the city of Nashua, to the taxpayers in Nashua is going to be. I think folks at home are questioning these things too. So that's what's going on here in Nashua. Masks, barriers, transparency, big expenses.
Other expenses too are the school. The new schools are putting
Was
up.
there $11 million pay increase?
I don't know. There was a big pay increase too. And you talked about lawsuits. They've lost 2 or 3 lawsuits too that I don't know how they are, how much they are, but that's it.
Well, I know we're probably getting close to the end of the show. I did want to mention one other bill that I put in, and one had to do with the fact of mandates for the vaccinations for our students. Channel 9 did a little thing about how some students were, if you weren't vaccinated in the cafeteria in one of the towns, that the students were put in a cubicle during lunchtime. The vaccinated kids weren't. They could just go roam around free. There's discussions now about how some of the vaccinated children can go to school without the masks on, but if you're unvaccinated, the kids won't be able to take off their masks. And so what we have here is if we know that whether you're vaccinated or you're unvaccinated, you still spread the disease. Right? So you're either a clean spreader or a dirty spreader. You're either vaccinated or you're unvaccinated. So I put in a bill which basically says that the local municipalities, the local schools cannot mandate the vaccine on the children. It's up to the parents. And if Senator Bradley put in an amendment saying, well, how about if we do a little compromise so that we don't just do a carte blanche, you can't mandate it. How about if we allow the legislature, both House and the Senate, over supermajority or majority, if we find that there are some extenuating circumstances, if they can all agree on the mandate, then it won't be the governor doing an executive order. It'll have to be the full House and the full Senate. And so I agreed to that. The problem with getting the kickbacks with some of the physicians are saying, well, this is politicized. You're politicizing this. And I'm saying, hold on. Those horses have already left the barn. You got a whole herd of horses that left the barn on this topic. When candidate Biden and candidate Kamala Harris came out during the campaign saying, I do not trust the FDA. They said, I do not trust the CDC. they did a grave disservice to this country because they over-politicized what's going on, and maybe even on the Trump side. You know, I hand it to you. Maybe. I don't know. But they politicized it. And now we have multiple opinions out there, whether it's effective, whether it's not effective, whether it's going to be good for the kids or bad. Excuse me, I got a cough. But one thing nobody can answer: what is the 5-year, 10-year, and 20-year side effects to these vaccines to the children?
Yeah.
When there's already a 97, 98% survival rate on this. There are more children dying from car accidents and other things than from COVID. We understand that there will be some people that will not survive, just like with the flu or any other thing. So I put in a bill empowering the parents rather than the local bureaucrats, the local school districts. Like with the mask mandates, people want that decision. The parents don't want their children to be wards of the state. They belong to the parents. The parents know what's best for these children. And so I'm fighting for the parents. I think they should make the determination. Nothing stops them from getting that vaccine.
Sure.
And I have helped the local orphanage here in Nashua. They wanted it. They got it. I've helped seniors get the vaccine. It's not that I'm anti-vax. I just think that the parents should have the full right to say yes or no. And these children should not be separated and treated as though they're some kind of dirty alien.
Right. That's politics too.
And that is wicked politics. And yet at the same time, we see the ICE agents escorting people from across the border, putting them all over our country.
Packing them in buses.
We don't know if they're vaccinated. Will we know? We're not going to know because, again, transparency. With this administration, hello. They're being transported around the country. And when you see spikes, you wonder, is it because of them? Or what is the cause of the spikes? But I've talked with somebody from Pfizer. And he said, you know, Senator, I want you to understand that one of our big concerns right now is that the people that are coming over the border illegally may be carrying a new strain of tuberculosis that we do not have a vaccine for. Now that's an interesting concept, isn't it?
Yeah.
And they're being spread around the country. Why? What is this administration doing? What are they doing to the American people? It's almost like it's a controlled demolition of this country. You're shutting off our pipelines. You're sending people around this country, which are here illegally, absorbing the taxpayers' funds in all these municipalities. Why are you doing that? Why? Stop it. But this bill that I put in specifically is for the parents, and the parents are tired. They're angry. You would not believe the emails that we get. Stop them from mandating these vaccines. My kids do not belong to the state. Senator French has got a bill as well, and he says, well, he put in a bill which talks about human rights. And, you know, in Massachusetts, if you want to go into a restaurant, show me your papers. Well, do you want to know if I've been vaccinated for hepatitis 2? How about HIV? How about my shingles? Don't forget my flu vaccine. You want all that on my little cell phone so I can come in and eat in your restaurant? Something's wrong.
Yeah.
Something's wrong, and the health department is not part of our U.S. Constitution and our liberties. So I'm ranting, but it's everybody's talking, and they're pushing at me on this type of thing, and they don't want the government's heavy hammer on in their feet on their neck. I don't think people should be discriminated against if they're not vaccinated. They have a right. I should be able to go into a store without having to show my papers. This is not the 1940s.
That's right.
You know, correct me if I'm wrong. I know some people are worried. That's fine, but don't push your fear on us.
Yep.
You know, if you're vaccinated, you should be okay, according to Mr. Fauci. If I'm not vaccinated, or if somebody chooses not to be vaccinated, you have no right to push what you want on me.
Right.
You're not in charge of my health. And if the vaccine doesn't work, why are you getting it? These are all the things that are coming before us. And I think that when it comes to tension, you can even see it in people's driving. People are intense. They're just, what's next? You know, you got the inflation. You got the gas prices. You've got a war that could just completely just throw our country into the loop.
We're talking about all the stuff we can have for next month.
I know. But it's on my heart right now, and I just that's one of the things why I put that bill in. A lot of people are really are trying to be heard, and I think the frustration is increasing.
And then,
There's been a lot of dictating in these last 2 years.
Yeah.
so 2 more weeks, let's get together again and give see what's happened from this session. I like that's the feedback from our audience. I'd like to tell them that the Nashua Republican City Committee meets on the second Wednesday of every month, and they have a website, NashuaGOP.org. Look up all the events, look up how you can be a helper in the election, or if you want to actually be in the voting area, there are a dozen people that are volunteers, not volunteers because they get paid. They work the election, and you want to get involved, we'll get you involved in that. Well, thank you for listening, and tell us how you feel about what we're talking about and whether you want to hear more. Thank you.
The preceding program was provided by an independent producer solely responsible for its content. The opinions expressed do not necessarily represent the views of this station, its staff, board of directors, or underwriters.